There we go. We are live. Okay. Just waiting for a couple people to get on here. We get a few people on here. Tonight's our Facebook Live video. We've got a pretty interesting tractor to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about a John Deere 435. There's one person watching. Look at that. George, you are the first man on. And Wendell, how you doing, Wendell? Like I say, when we get up to 10 people, we'll get going here. Dylan's on there. There's 9 people already. Well, tonight we're going to talk about a John Deere 435. And John Deere 435s aren't necessarily the hardest tractor in the world to find. But tonight we have a John Deere 435 that has 1,000 original hours. This little tractor came from a estate sale in Michigan a few years back. In fact, I've never even washed it. It's just as dirty as it was the day I got it. A little story behind it. Was bought new by a fellow at a farm, a little 20-acre place. Really just bought as a hobby tractor from new. And it is, I think, 50 from the end of production. They made something like 3,500 of these things. In fact, let me take a quick look at the serial number. I can't quite remember it. I'll show it to y'all. It's right there's the serial number. I can't read it without my glasses, but it's in the last, about 50 from the end of production. They only made these things for about a year. The fellow who owned this tractor bought it new. And about 5 years ago, he had the wheels sandblasted and painted and new tires put on the front. The rear tires are original. The paint is original. But anyway, the 435, a little bit of interesting history if you're not a John Deere buff. You know, the first John Deeres with upright engines were the John Deere M. Started building in about 1948 in a factory in Dubuque, Iowa. And then they went on to build the 40 and the 420. And when the 30 series came out, they came out with the 430, which was, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks, the 430 was the last of the upright two-cylinder gas tractors. And they were only made in 58, 9, and 60. And then right at the end, 9 and 60, they thought, well, we ought to have a little diesel tractor. And since John Deere didn't have a little upright diesel to fit this chassis, and it certainly wasn't economically feasible to design an engine for it, they bought the 2-53 Detroit from General Motors. The 253 Detroit being 106 cubic inches, the old Detroit diesel engines. 2 signified the number of cylinders, 53 the cubic inches per cylinder. So it was 106 cubic inches, 2-cycle with a blower, not a turbo, a mechanically driven, a Roots supercharger, as the Europeans would call it, a blower, so that it would run 2-cycle. So the 435 was made for something like only about a year or so, and they made about 3,500. There were a few running changes in them along the way. The main running changes being in the front end support right here. The first ones did not have dowel pins in the block, and this casting was different, and they would all break. You'll see them welded all the time right here. This, unfortunately, is not. And this one, being completely original, even has the original hose clamps and all that kind of thing. They're available initially with the square front end like this, same as a 420, 430. And then the last year, maybe even both years, don't quote me for sure, they were offered with a swept back front end, kind of like what you could see on a 2010 or something like that. A few of them had the swept back front end. I've owned a couple, and they are uglier than sin with a swept back front end on it. It's a little bit rare, but it's butt ugly. They had 2 different kinds of fenders, a little clamshell like this one, which were most common. Then they had what they called heavy-duty fenders, which were a little bit bigger and rounder and came a little over the wheel a little further. They had the typical seat with the square cushion like most 2-cylinders, or this one, which is original with, believe it or not, the original cushion, some of the original plastic still there. It was called the float ride seat, which had a little bit more cushion than normal. They had 540 PTO, 3-point. And the 435 was only made in the W, kind of like the 430W, 420W, with the straight axles. It was never built as a high crop or an S or anything like that. They're all made just like that. Some did have remote hydraulics. I'd like to put some on this one someday. If I could ever get one where the paint would match, I'd stick it on there, but I don't want to mess with it. This one has the 9-bolt wheels. They're also available with power adjust, which is a popular option. People do like the way they look when they have power adjust, because then the rims are silver and they do look pretty cool. Another option that I think out of the 3,500 built, maybe 1,000 or even less, had power steering. This one does have the power steering, has the original power steering decal. Original steering wheel's in good shape. I believe they all had live PTO and 5-speed. A little different in the fact that the hydraulic pump was only belt-driven. Just like that. That's how they made it work with the Detroit diesel. And the nose is a little bit different than a 430, in that a John Deere 430 would have had an all-tin nose on these. This here is cast aluminum. And then the other, it's a little wider than a 430, but similar looking, but just a little bit wider. One important detail on this tractor I noticed that I've never seen on a restored one, and you don't see an original one enough, but amazes me that you can still read it right here. Of course, the fuel filler is right under this door. Right here, stenciled on the hood, is diesel fuel. And I'd like to know if anybody else has one with that. It says diesel fuel only, actually. That's just what's left of the original stencil. I don't think I've ever seen one restored with that on there. Maybe they didn't all have it. Maybe just these late ones. But anyway, that's the little 435 GM. And I'll start it up. And it much as I love it, and people who have them love them, it is probably the most annoying sounding farm tractor ever built. I cannot imagine how you could sit on this little son of a bitch all day and listen to this without either having no hearing or going completely fucking crazy. The 440 crawler, of course, had the same engine, and the 440 industrial tractor. This one starts right up only because it's been running. Doesn't start any better than any of them, even though it's only got 1,000 hours. There we go. We'll just let it idle a little bit. That's what it sounds like at idle. It does have a cool sound. That's a good idea. We'll do the Plowmaster this week yet. It's still at my place. Richard Easterbrook will like that. But anyway, the little 435. I'll do the Plowmaster when I'm at the shop. I'm at home right now. But there's a little 435 Detroit diesel. You can hear it running. Now that doesn't sound so bad. Now when you rev it up, they do sound pretty annoying. Can you imagine sitting on that all day? You'd either come home crazy or deaf. I don't know which. But that's how one is supposed to sound. It doesn't smoke. It does leak oil, so that means it still has oil left. But that's what they sound like. There she is idling. With all that said about how annoying it is, I do love this little tractor. I always wanted a nice little original 435, so this one's definitely a keeper. Of course, it has to be a keeper. Nobody'd ever give me a profit on it. Hey, on the other hand, I love it. It's in the last 100 made. I believe it's actually in the last 50 made. Hey there, Ted Everett. Little 435 Detroit with 1,005 original hours, original paint, original back tires. The rest of the wheels have been painted and the front tires have been replaced. That's it. It came from a very small estate sale in Michigan a few years ago. But there's the 435. I'm glad you all had a chance to watch for us tonight. Got lots more videos coming soon. And don't forget the Northeast Antique Power Association Tractor Show coming up August 15th. Saturday, we got a tractor pull with Richard Love on the sled. We're going to pull every class. No matter what tractor you bring, we'll have a class for you. And then Sunday, we're also going to pull semis and trucks. In between, we got plowing and all kinds of stuff. The Northeast Antique Power Association show at Trolley Line Farms. We'll have that on Facebook soon. At any rate, thank you very much for watching my video on the 435. And before I shut down, I just got one thing you gotta hear.